I last made a video talking about the best USB drive options for DJs back in 2018, and looking back at that now, I disagree with around 80% of what I said then. Welcome to Beatsource Tech, my name is Mojaxx, and in this episode I'm going to give you my new recommendations for DJ media storage in 2024 and beyond. Why am I making this video today? Well, it's all come about because of these, the new Chroma USB drives from DJ Techtools. They sent me out a couple with no expectation that I would review them, but whilst testing them, I went back to that older video I made back in 2018 and realised that it was rather outdated and includes some advice which I would disagree with today. So I figured I might as well actually give these a review and at the same time bring you my updated takes on the best media storage devices for DJs. Firstly, we are talking about storage to use with media players here, and mainly Rekordbox standalone kit. I'll touch on engine stuff separately later. If you're just looking for external storage to use with your DJ laptop, say to keep your library on, then that's easy. Grab a well-reviewed external SSD and you are good. I like the Samsung T7 the most. It's a perfect combo of price, size and performance, but I also have drives from Western Digital and Crucial, all of which I've been perfectly happy with. I did have one Crucial X8 drive die on me recently, but that had been used daily for 6 years, so I'm not complaining. No doubt some of you will be saying that a drive like the T7 is also a perfect choice for CDJs or XDJs as well, and I'd say you're half right. When it comes to loading them up with music from Rekordbox, they are blazing fast, and it is great to have your whole collection with you. But I'm not such a fan for two main reasons. Firstly, I think you should always have at least 2 drives with you in case one goes bad or say the link cable is broken or missing on CDJs, and a pair of good SSDs will cost you a pretty penny. Secondly, the USB cable for me is an extra point of failure in the booth, especially on Rekordbox kit where it sticks out of the top. Speaking of cables, that brings me to the first reason my old video is so out of date, USB-C. It's now been years since a Mac laptop has shipped with a USB-A port on it, but Rekordbox gear all still requires USB-A drives. And frankly, at this point, I'm kind of sick of carrying a USB hub or dongle around with me just so I can load up sticks. It's simply another thing to break or lose. Since the last video, I did pick up some of these, the SanDisk dual drives, which slide both ways to reveal either a USB-C or USB-A connector. I wish I hadn't though, because soon enough, that locking mechanism gives up and when you push it into the socket, it just retracts on its own. Very frustrating. But still, it seems to me that a drive which has both connectors is the ideal solution. Enter the Chroma USB from DJ Techtools. Now, I'm a big fan of their products in general. You'll see their Chroma cables being used in these videos a lot. So I was definitely intrigued by these drives. They're OEM manufactured, obviously, but they've made it clear that they've gone to some lengths to find the best type of enclosure and memory for this specific use by DJs. When it comes to the design, I'm into it. A sturdy aluminium body with USB-C at one end, USB-A at the other, but with no mechanics involved. The part that swings around is just there to protect the drive and allow you to put it onto a keychain. It's not actually needed for the drive to function. They come in 4 colours, black and chrome, which I don't have, plus the space grey and rose gold, which they sent me. Clearly they never watched my Opus Quad review, because if they had, they'd know I really don't like rose gold, but hey ho. The DJ Techtools logo is laser engraved on there, which looks good, and for an extra $25 or so you can even have your own logo engraved on there too, although there is a 2 to 3 week turnaround time for that. They come in these little plastic cases, which is a nice touch, and they also have a little plastic cover for the USB-C end, which you will definitely lose. I'm frankly amazed I haven't lost mine yet. The Chroma USB drive is available in 1 capacity, 128GB, for $45 in the US. That's a little bit above the market rate for a more generic drive of this type, but not unreasonable for a drive which you know has been designed with this particular use in mind. Why does that matter? Well, the headline speed of a drive isn't necessarily the most important factor when exporting to it from Rekordbox. With lots of drives, copying one big file to them can be fast, but Rekordbox copies tons of tiny little files one after the other, and that's where some drives can fall down when it comes to performance. DJ Techtools claim they've chosen memory for their drive which is tailored for that kind of use, so let's do some comparisons. I'm entirely focused on write speeds here, by the way. As I said in the last video, almost any USB stick out there will be fast enough for 4 tracks to be played back off it at once on CDJs. It's how long it takes to load up the drives with music that we're concerned with here. A faster read speed will, at best, be a bit snappier when browsing on the device, but that's usually kind of restricted by the hardware anyway. To do the test, I formatted all the drives in HFS Plus, more on that later. I used my M1 Mac Mini because that has both native USB-A and C ports on the hardware, eliminating any potential bottlenecks caused by a hub or dongle. I created both a regular device library and a device library plus on each drive so that Rekordbox 7 would export both. I then built a playlist containing 1000 MP3s which totaled 9.1 gigabytes in size and exported it to each drive. In the past I've used the disk speed test app from Blackmagic, but this time I went for Amorphous Disk Mark, which gives more visibility into the performance with smaller chunks of data. You will see that on screen for all the drives, first with 1 GB measurement size, then 16 megabytes. You can pause if you want to read those properly. First up, the Chroma USBs. These are USB 3.2 spec and were the fastest of all the drives I had, exporting the 1000 tracks in just over a minute via USB-C. I didn't actually time the export on the USB-A side, but the disk mark speeds were only marginally slower on there. Keep an eye on the numbers towards the bottom of the charts as we go through these drives, as those are the ones that mainly count with Rekordbox. Next up, the SanDisk Extreme Pro. This is an older model, only USB 3.0, and the more recent versions are USB 3.2 and therefore should be even faster. These drives were always the ones that were recommended to me by Pioneer DJ staff, and they do work great. This one had an export time of 2 minutes 20 seconds, but it's USB-A only, and as I've said, I'm done with that. Then we have a drive which I bought specifically for this test, the SanDisk Dual Drive Go, which has a similar dual-ended design to the Chroma USBs. And I was impressed. The export took just under 3 minutes via USB-C, which is pretty snappy compared to some that we'll see in a minute. After that, I had some non-pro USB 3.0 SanDisk Extremes, which have served me very well over the years. Considering their age, these are still nice and fast, and I do get why Pioneer DJ have always recommended them. This is another drive I bought for this test, mainly because it's probably the most commonly used drive I see out there in the wild, the SanDisk Ultra. It is a current model, but only USB 3.0, and with a 6.5 minute export time, things were starting to get a little more uncomfortable here. I tested my SanDisk dual drives, even though I've already said you shouldn't buy them, and the export time of almost 10 minutes confirmed that even further. Just avoid those full stop. These were the ones that broke my heart a bit, the SanDisk Flare drives, which I recommended in the last video. The export time of over 19 minutes was actually painful, and in retrospect, I hate thinking about how much of my life I have wasted waiting for these to finish loading up before gigs. As I said in that last video, James Hype put me onto these, so I'm going to blame him. I'm sure he doesn't use them anymore either. And finally, I knew this was going to be bad, but to this day, I still see people using these USB 2.0 SanDisk Blade drives out and about, so I thought I would test mine. I started the export, went and had lunch, and it was still going when I came back, taking an hour and a half altogether. I suspect nobody using these would care enough about their tech to be watching this video, but if that is you, please do yourself a favour and go get a new stick. There are plenty for around $10, which will literally change your life. I did try and be as scientific and fair as possible as I could be with these tests, but of course there are limitations. One thing I didn't take into account is that some drives handle heat better than others, and that can affect performance, especially when moving larger amounts of tracks as the drives warm up. The Chroma USB drives seemed to deal with that very well when I totally filled them up, which was good to see. And of course there are countless other drives out there, so I'd love for you to recommend some of your favourites in the comments. But out of the ones I have here, there are two clear winners. The Chroma USBs were comfortably the fastest and have that functional dual-sided design. No hubs or dongles are required. The build quality is great and the customization options mean you can make it truly your own. So despite the higher cost compared to some, they are a solid recommend from me. A shout out also to the SanDisk Dual Drive Go, which shares that similar design, very practical in 2024. It's very different in construction with a plastic enclosure, but it's very small and light, so easy to carry. It also had speed which was respectable, if not in the same league as the Chromas, and they can be had for not much more than $10 for a 128GB drive if you shop around. If I was putting together a Rekordbox USB kit for myself today, I'd probably have a pair of Chromas as my main drives and a couple of Dual Drive Go's as my spares, or to keep on my keyring for emergencies. What else did I get wrong in my last video? Well, let's talk about formatting. I had said I recommended formatting drives as FAT32 or MS-DOS FAT as it's alternatively known, and DJ Techtools say the same, which I understand. Well, I'm going to say now, if you're a Mac user, that's not actually the move after all. FAT32 is great for compatibility. It works on Windows, Macs and all rekordbox hardware, but it's also an ancient file system and incredibly slow. For example, that 1000 track playlist exported to the DJ Techtools drive formatted as FAT32, 9 minutes 34 seconds, as opposed to just over 1 minute when formatted in HFS+, otherwise known as macOS Extended Journaled. And the thing is, and I double checked this with Pulse from Alpha Theta before saying it, every piece of standalone rekordbox kit ever made from the original CDJ 2000 to today supports both FAT32 and HFS+, without exception. There are some glaring limitations with this. Windows machines can read but not write to HFS Plus drives, so if you also use Windows, it's FAT32 for you. At least as I understand it, Windows 11 can now finally format drives bigger than 32GB to FAT32, where it needed third-party software to do so in the past, so that's something. Engine OS can't read HFS Plus either, so if you need a dual-use drive, you'll have to use FAT32. And if you're the kind of person who is brave enough to update the firmware on rekordbox hardware at venues, you'll need a FAT32 formatted drive for that too. Some more recent rekordbox devices support exFAT, which is more contemporary, cross-platform and faster, but if you format as exFAT, your drive won't work with any older rekordbox hardware you might encounter at gigs, which means I can't recommend that unless you only ever play on your own kit. But yeah, I'm going to say this now, if you only use Macs, then I think HFS Plus is the way to go for drive formatting. Maybe keep one FAT32 drive around for emergencies, but everything else, HFS Plus all the way. There's another thing from my older video which is wrong in retrospect, although that's not my fault. I said that using SD cards was a great option. The thing is, aside from the CDJ 3000, no piece of rekordbox hardware shipped in the past 5 years has featured an SD card slot. And I hadn't anticipated how much Pioneer DJ all-in-one units like the RX3 and the XZ would have taken over venue DJ booths, at least where I am, and none of those take SD cards. So as much as I still think using SD cards in CDJs is cool, I honestly think you're wasting your time and money investing in those in 2024. A side note, if you do use SD cards, they must be formatted as FAT32 to use in CDJs, so you do lose some speed benefits there too. And finally, let's circle back to Engine OS. Honestly, the whole drive speed thing is much less of a concern with Engine because with the way they've done things, exports are simply a lot faster to begin with. But unless I'm forgetting something, all the Engine hardware from Denon DJ and Newmark does feature an SD card slot, which can be formatted as exFAT. So if you're strictly an Engine user, SD cards still seem like a great choice on that platform to me. Just check that whatever card you buy has good write speeds and that your SD card reader does too. That could be a bottleneck when exporting otherwise. But yeah, for Engine, get any drive with decent speed, format it as exFAT, and you are good to go. Simple. So there you go, my take on the best USB storage options for DJs right now. This topic is quite a tricky one because the tech moves so quickly, and unlike with DJ specific hardware, there are literally thousands of different options available on the market at any one time, and it would be impossible for me to cover everything. You may well have found another brand or design which has worked well for you, so please do help out your fellow DJs and drop your own recommendations in the comments below. Thanks for watching this episode of Beatsource Tech. I do hope you've enjoyed it or found it useful. If you have, please give the video a thumbs up and make sure you're subscribed to the channel and you've turned on notifications so you don't miss any future videos. I'll see you next time!